Welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and as you can tell, first of all, welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year to everybody. It's been a wild 2025 so far if you live in my area in Southern California. If you don't know, we've had quite a bit of fires going on lately. Sadly, they were very close to where I live in Los Angeles, but fortunately, knock on wood, everybody's okay. I do know a couple of people, unfortunately, who did lose everything in the wildfire. So, of course, our hearts go out to them. If you're willing to, if you're being very generous, please donate to the Red Cross. The Red Cross has set up quite a few foundations. I was just looking into Super Brew. For those of you who don't know, Super Brew is a pick'em system that is online that allows you to pick games for a bunch of different types of sports from all around the world, specifically rugby, and specifically Major League Rugby. We've been doing this for at least, good grief now, like the last 3 seasons, I believe. It's absolutely free. Usually I put up, for the winner, whoever wins in the end gets a MLR t-shirt of the team of their choice. I'm also thinking of maybe making this one pay as optional, and donating some of the proceeds to the winner and to maybe the Red Cross as well. I'll go more into details about that. Also, too, I'm trying to find out more information because right now I looked, and this is Sunday that I'm doing this. This will post later next weekend on Saturday. And as of this moment on Sunday, there is no Major League Rugby set up for Super Brew. I just sent them over a message via Twitter, so hopefully they'll get back to me and let me know if that's true or not. If not, it's kind of a sad deal because Super Brew was definitely a lot of fun. Also kind of was part of some of the videos that I make because it keeps track of all the pick'ems that we do. Maybe I'll run something on my own. It does take a lot of time, but maybe I'll have some time to be able to do that. But I would like to maybe do something to kind of donate money to a Red Cross charity because, speaking from experience, and we'll get to rugby, didn't mean to go onto a tangent here, but being in the situation that I was in, really very thankful for the thousands of men and women and first responders who, without them, this could have been a completely different situation. To be honest, very much so where I might not be able to do these videos. So I'm very, very grateful for them and do want to kind of do something to kind of donate to a worthy cause such as themselves. But anyways, welcome back to the channel. It's been a crazy 2025, as I mentioned before, but now that the new year has begun, that means we are just a month away from a brand new Major League Rugby season 2025. A lot has gone on since New England was able to win their back-to-back MLR Shields. We unfortunately have lost a team, the Dallas Jackals, who were not very long in Major League Rugby, unfortunately had to fold. I'll go into a little bit more detail of how that kind of affects and changes things amongst the teams. But what this is now this is going to be the first of a series of previews of the teams. I do this every year. I'm going to be previewing the Western Conference, I'll be previewing the Eastern Conference, and then I will be doing a video with my power ranking system, my way too early predictions of how I feel the teams will end. That's always a fun video because lately I've been really, really off with my predictions. But that's a fun video. And then, of course, we're going to get right into the season. It's going to be a fun, exciting season. Granted, we are losing a team, but it really doesn't make any difference because looking at these teams, not a lot has changed, though some of teams have drastically gotten better, but a lot of teams have kind of stayed consistently the same, meaning the quality of rugby, which has been phenomenal last season, will be probably just that much better going into this coming season, where even though I feel maybe there's already a front runner to who's going to raise up the shield, it's anybody's guess of who might be facing them on the opposite side of the pitch in that Major League Rugby Championship. But getting ahead of myself, let's start with the Western Conference, and we're going to start with, I'm splitting up into this part one and part two. Part one, as you can see, I've titled The Outsiders, and outsiders meaning outsiders looking in, not the NWO outsiders. But the outsiders that are looking in, possible contenders just out of the fringe of being into the playoffs. Though the beauty of the playoff system, at least one of these two teams will make it in because it's the top four teams, just like last season. Top four teams of the Western Conference go in, top four teams of the Eastern Conference go in. So one of these two teams possibly, unless something happens to the top three teams that I'm going to be predicting in the second part of the video, might be the team that unfortunately will be out. But the other team, quite possibly, maybe barely squeaking by to get in. But again, we'll go into it, though. And, again, if you've never seen my videos, you might notice the jersey, RFCLA. I'm a huge RFCLA fan because, again, born and raised here in Southern California. I won't deny that I do work for RFCLA as the PA announcer. So as much as I am a fan, I'll tell you right now, try to be as biased as possible with what I'm going to review, but I do feel RFCLA has a lot going for them. They've made a lot of moves going into the offseason and now getting ready for year two of RFCLA. So again, let's get into it first with RFCLA. So, RFCLA, as you see here on the notes, they finished unfortunately last in their first year in Major League Rugby with a record of 5-10-1 with 32 points, bottom 6th place out of 6 teams in the Western Conference. But man, like I said, they are not the same team going into year two as they were in year one. First of all, completely new coaching staff. Gone is Stephen Brett, former coach of the Atlanta Rugby ATL team that transferred over to LA, and returning technically to LA is head coach, though his label is director of rugby, so he's not necessarily coach Stephen Hoyles, but he is director of rugby Stephen Hoyles, though from the way it sounds, that's pretty much the head coach position. Stephen Hoyles, if you're not familiar, he was the assistant coach to the LA Guillotines when they first arrived onto the scene in Major League Rugby back in 2020, and then he became the head coach of the team in 2021 in the second year of RFCLA of the Guillotines. In that first year, of course, the Guillotines were able to lift the MLR championship in a great moment that I'm very proud of. So Stephen Hoyles, no stranger to success in Major League Rugby in LA, and then a couple of familiar faces too that are joining them. Senior assistant coach is going to be Dave Dennis, and again, if you're not familiar with that name, Dave Dennis is actually the former captain of the Guillotines in both years one and year two. Phenomenal Australian player, great guy on and off the pitch, a true gentleman. Great to have his expertise and knowledge as the senior assistant. And then I guess the only one that actually has the name coach in his title, the attacking coach, Sam Harris, the former head coach of the Chicago Hounds, who left his position last season, near the end of last season, and now has made the transition over to LA, which is a very interesting development. Sam Harris had a lot of success as the coach of the Austin Gale Gronies before that team unfortunately had to fold, moved over and started the new franchise, the Chicago Hounds. Depending on how you look at it, kind of, the Hounds were very, very inconsistent. Sam Harris unfortunately had to go, and then the Hounds ended up winning the last couple games to make it to the playoffs. But Sam Harris, again, no stranger to success in Major League Rugby. His tenure in the Austin Gale Gronies was pretty impressive. So he brings a pretty big pedigree to LA. So a phenomenal coaching staff, the first and foremost. Also want to mention that if you're an LA fan and you didn't get the memo, LA is no longer playing at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson. We have now moved to the campus of the UCLA Bruins, where we'll be playing at the Wallace Annenberg Stadium, which is actually their their soccer field. It's also technically their rugby field, though sometimes they play their rugby games on a different pitch. But it sits about 3,000, so slightly bigger than what was the practice track field that we usually played in, or we spent half of our time playing in at Dignity Hill Sports Park. So as much as a personal person who was working with RFCLA, I kind of miss not being able to be at the Dignity Hill Sports Park. As a personal bias, UCLA campus is much closer to me. Parking though may be a little horrendous, but it is slightly a little bit bigger, not nearly as big as what Dignity Hill Sports Park was. So we were pretty much filling up that track practice field, about 2,000 seats. So this will be a nice little growth for us if we were able to fill up 3,000, which I feel we probably could, especially with this lineup. We're going to be attracting a lot of fans because we only won 5 games. We had a struggle the first year, but man, this roster, again, with the new coaching staff, probably new mindset, there is now more of a decision and a direct goal of winning and winning now. So first of all, let's talk about the names that are coming in. The biggest name coming in by an LA personal standpoint is Billy Meeks. Billy Meeks is returning to LA, started his career in Major League Rugby with the Guillotines, so it's kind of not surprising because, of course, again, he has experience with Stephen Hoyles. He played with Dave Dennis. Dave Dennis was his coach. It was very unfortunate to see Billy Meeks leave LA because he was so enamored in the community. He was such a great guy. And to go on to Chicago, but now he is back. And speaking of Chicago, he's familiar with Sam Harris because Sam Harris was his head coach too. So kind of makes sense to have Billy Meeks come back to LA. He actually also has a coffee shop in Venice Beach, California. So again, lots of roots in LA. Let's speak about the talent. Two-time back of the year, 2021 and 2022, both times with the Guillotines. Phenomenal player. Struggled a little bit last season because I feel, again, and if you watch my videos, I made mention of this a lot, it felt like Chicago really didn't know what to do with Meeks. They tried so many different positions for him to play. He played scrum half at one point. He's done lock a few times with the Guillotines just by that necessity. But man, if he can just stay at that center position, he is going to be phenomenal. And then, of course, the other big name, at least known to Major League Rugby fans, is Reese McDonald, formerly of the New England Free Jacks. He is a 2-time champion with the Free Jacks. 6 tries last season. Phenomenal player. And even better, he was the 2024 Major League Rugby Back of the Year. So technically, the LA RFCLA team has 2 Back of the Year champions for 3 years, since, and they've only been doing this award, I believe, for 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, we have arguably 2 of the best backs in Major League Rugby. Reese McDonald, a dynamic player. He can play fullback, he can play winger, but fullback is more of his familiar position. Phenomenal player for LA, but it doesn't end there. Not only that, now let's talk about the veteran players that we're bringing in. Huge signing here, Christian Lealifiano. Again, maybe not well known in American fans, but he is huge in the Super Rugby field. Global superstar, 17 years of experience in rugby. 26 times he's been capped by Australia. He's also one of the few players that was able to get capped in 2 nations. Not to go into the details, but there's rules that allow a player to play nationally for 2 nations. So he's not only capped for Australia, also played for Samoa as well in the recent 2023 World Cup. With the Brumbies in Australia for Super Rugby, he is the first Pacific Islander person to score over 1,000 points in his 11 seasons there. He's finished with 1,102 points, 7th all-time in Super Rugby history. 231 conversions made, 8th ranked of all time. 173 goal kicks made, 8th of all time. And 175 appearance, 7th of all time. So, I mean, this is a phenomenal player. He plays fly half, very smart player. Also played a couple years in Japan, Moana Pacifica, just recently in the Super Rugby Pacific League. Phenomenal player. He is going to bring a lot of experience and knowledge to RFCLA, and that's going to come in handy because unfortunately we do not have Dan Hollinshead anymore, nor do we have the veteran Jordan Chait. So Christian Lealifiano is going to be a phenomenal leader and a big voice to take leadership with the team. And another veteran player that was signed by LA is Gonzalo Bertrano, who is a Argentinian player, 68 caps with the Pumas, 12 years of rugby experience, scrum half, a lot of time played for the Super Rugby Jaguars team, as well as a couple years in Europe. Again, another phenomenal veteran player, a big voice to be heard, and he's going to come in handy because unfortunately we did lose Niall Saunders, the captain of last year's RFCLA team at scrum half. So Gonzalo Bertrano is going to be a huge piece to fill in the void that Niall Saunders is there. So two really big veteran signings. That's going to be huge. We also picked up Christian Dyer from the Houston SaberCats. Three years he's been playing over there. 14 caps 14 caps as an Eagle. Cal Bear graduate. Also will play fullback. We did of course lose a couple of great players. Jason Emery is one of them. Unfortunately, Jason Ewok Emery. I have a interview that I did with him. He unfortunately is going off to Old Glory DC. But again, some great players that we're also bringing back. Yuri Van Vuren, who unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury when he injured his Achilles tendon. Talented lock, didn't get a lot of chance to prove himself onto the pitch. He's fully healthy. He'll be coming back. Semi Kunitani, the top point scorer for RFCLA with 54 points, 10 tries, one of the top try scorers in the league. Jason Dom, phenomenal player, of course, 35 points scored, 7 tries scored for RFCLA. And again, Andrew Coe, winger, 30 points scored, 6 tries. Matt Heaton, oh God, one of the most physical players, Matt Heaton coming back, was at one point the Canadian Back of the Year, 15th Player of the Year, voted by the Canadian Rugby Union. Phenomenal player. You know, again, this is a team that looks phenomenal on paper, especially that the wing in the back row. I mean, you got Andrew Coe, you got Reese McDonald, you got Andrew Coe, you got Reese McDonald, you got some phenomenal, not Billy Meeks, you got phenomenal players that are going to make this team very dangerous. The only thing that we got to work on is, of course, which I mentioned before, is the disciplinary issues. Unfortunately, and I'm going to quote MLR Stats, which if you've never seen MLR Stats on Instagram, great Instagram account to follow. They do all these kind of stats that they keep track of. It's very informative. They did one on the number of cards that were issued out, yellow and red cards that were issued out over the years, specifically in 2024 last season. And no surprise, RFCLA had the most cards given out. Not only that season with 25 cards, 22 yellow cards and 3 red cards, but that was the most cards given to any team in any season of Major League Rugby. So year number 1 of RFCLA, they've already done more cards in one season than any other team. The closest to come second would be San Diego, and they had 23 total cards in 1 year. So that's the most, technically, it's not the most red cards that were given out that season. 5 of them were given to NOLA, but it is the most cards of any team in any season. Hopefully that will stop, you know, and with the new coaching staff, things like that will change. But again, with this team that's looking very phenomenal, and again, if everybody's healthy. Now, I should mention Reese McDonald did just come off with shoulder surgery, so we don't know exactly when he'll come back. Early predictions are that he'll be back at least by the beginning of April, or the beginning of March. So he's probably going to miss at least a couple first games, but as soon as he gets onto the pitch, he is going to be a difference maker for the team. And I really truly believe they're going to give this next team, Utah, a run for that 4th place finish And again, it's four teams get into the playoffs, so you just can't finish last. Because with Dallas out of the league, there's only 5 teams in the Western Conference. LA just has to avoid finishing last. So now let's talk about Utah. And the Utah Warriors last season finished 5th place in the Western Conference, only 3 points ahead of RFCLA. So RFCLA was really close to getting that 5th spot. Still out of the playoffs, but competing with Utah for that 5th spot. Utah finished 5-11 with 35 points, so not a lot better than RFCLA. And I'll be honest, looking on paper, Utah is one of those teams that really, I mean, we don't have the full roster yet of the team, but from what I can gather, they don't really look much different than what they did last season. Greg Cooper does come back as their coach. This is 3rd year coaching the Utah Warriors. They are losing quite a few players that are difference makers, in my opinion. Paul Mullins, a very talented Irish prop, capped eagle. He's going to NOLA. Luis Conradi, unfortunately, is retiring. And then the big one, this is the big one that's really going to hurt Utah, I feel. Mike Manson. Arguably had a phenomenal rookie season in MLR, and possibly was his only season in Major League Rugby, because he's now in Super Rugby playing for his home nation's team, the Highlanders. Mike Manson was phenomenal, 14 tries in 12 games, just a dynamic player. Easily could have won Rookie of the Year, didn't, but phenomenal player, but unfortunately not coming back for year number 2. What Utah is picking up, though, is they're bringing in Jordan Trainer, who, if you're a Giltinis fan, you'll recognize the name. He was a former Giltinis, also played for NOLA as well, coming over after spending a year in the National Provincial Championship, the NPC, which is the New Zealanders' second-tier rugby competition right behind Super Rugby. A very talented fullback. Coming back for the Utah team, like I said, not looking too much different than than last season team. Paul Lasike, talented capped Eagles center. Bailey Wilson, another capped Eagles, a flanker. Another capped Eagles playing prop, Angus McMillan. So there is talent on the team. But like I said, with that talent, they still only managed a record of 5-11. And losing Mike Manson is huge. Also, too, we don't quite know what the status is of Joel Hodgson, the very talented fly half who scored 111 points last season with the 4th top point scorer in MLR. Not really quite sure. There's no confirmation that he has re-signed, because again, if you follow Utah's Instagram account, they've announced a lot of their re-signings, a lot of their signings, and Joel Hodgson oddly not mentioned in any of those posts. So don't quite know if they're still working on that or not. But again, not having Joel Hodgson, that's huge. Not having Mike Manson, that's huge. And not really picking up any big names, no offense to Utah. Again, it's a team that pretty much looks like the same team last season. And they only mustered 5th place, barely 5th place. LA was only 3 points away. And LA has phenomenally increased their abilities in their talent pool. I would argue to say that RFCLA is probably the most upgraded team in the offseason out of any of the teams in the Major League Rugby. Now, again, does that really mean anything? Just being very realistic about this and trying to prove I'm not a homer for my team, but just proving, being very realistic. Chicago also looked very good on paper with the amount of talent that they had, and they struggled quite a bit until just recently. So we'll see if RFCLA can put it together, though they look phenomenal on paper. But again, you don't know until you see everything on the pitch. But what is cool about RFCLA, and again, if you didn't know about this, RFCLA right now, the squad is in Fiji, where they're going to be preparing to do a preseason game against Fiji Drua, the Fijian Super Rugby team in Fiji. Honestly, I feel like that is, not only is that very groundbreaking, it's bringing MLR to a global spotlight, because all over Fiji, they are taking notice of this. But it's also allowing RFCLA, the team, to prepare, to get ready, to practice with each other, get used to each other a month out of the season, as well as play against a very top-notch, competitive, international caliber team like the Fijian Drua. No disrespect to MLR, you're not going to see that in MLR, even if you did a preseason game with any of the MLR teams. This is phenomenal. Last season, RFCLA barely had a couple of weeks to prepare for the season. This is well in advance of the beginning of the season. It's very similar, when I heard about this news, very similar to what the Guiltinis did when they were preparing for year number one. Due to COVID, they took the whole team to Hawaii, and they spent about a month in Hawaii practicing and getting to know each other, getting used to each other, getting a feel for each other. And all the Guiltini players that I talked to about said that that was a primary reason why they were very successful in that year. And in that year one, they won the MLR Shield. So will that work again for RFCLA? We'll see. Supposedly the game against Fiji, the Fijian Drua, will be streamed on some sort of rugby platform. If it is, I'll let you know, of course, on my channel. And of course, I'm hoping that I'll be able to watch that live and maybe do a watch along with that as well. So keep to the channel to watch that as well. And again, keep to my YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure you've already seen the Jason Emery interview that I put up. Phenomenal interview. I have a couple more interviews on tap that will be dropping as well. And of course, now that you see this video, you know that it's MLR season. You know you're going to be seeing a lot of MLR videos and contents coming up as we prepare for the 2025 season of Major League Rugby. So watch part 2 of our Western Conference preview. Next weekend will be the Eastern Conference preview, which I'll probably split up into 2 as well. And yeah, let me know how you feel about the new setup. I do take your guys' advice and criticism to heart. I have myself a stand. I have a new background. Nothing fancy. But hopefully it works for you guys. Let me know if it does. Let me know if it doesn't. And we'll just go from there. So again, I'm excited for MLR season. I'll let you guys know about the Super Brew as well when that starts to come up. And I'm super excited for 2025 season of Major League Rugby. I hope you guys are too. Thank you as always for checking out my video. Thank you again to the first responders that helped us out in the fires. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart so much. And as always, I'll see you on the pitch.